There are nights when I wake up to the sound of a gunshot, but there is no noise, just the echo in my head and the metallic taste in my mouth. I know what real sleep is anymore. The pillow is always damp with sweat, and sometimes I lie still for hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to if it was me, but remembering what exactly. I was trained to stay calm in a shootout, to negotiate with armed criminals, to not flinch at sight of blood, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me to open the drawer and find the holster empty, and to feel, in that my entire life had been disrupted by something I couldn't see, the silence that morning. It was the kind of silence you can't. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was like the world was holding its breath, like something had moved, and missed the moment when everything changed. My hand was shaking, cold sweat was running down the back of my neck. And no matter how hard I tried to myself that I'd left the gun at the police station, deep down, something told me it had been used by someone. I was sleeping, and that someone, maybe it was me. Ever since that day, my head has been spinning like a broken tape recorder. There are parts, hours blurred, but there is one image that keeps coming back, the reflection in the police car mirror. It wasn't my gaze. I always before pulling it back into my mind, but if I don't tell it, maybe this thing will stay alive. Maybe it will come back. It was a Thursday, of those regular ones with bad coffee and a late report. I remember the pale morning light coming through the window, and the strange way the radio, as if it already knew what was going to happen, as if you were calling me. And there, in that moment, when routine stilled me like an old blanket, everything started to fall apart, even if I wouldn't realize it until hours later. But me, something. Have you ever woken up feeling like something big, something wrong, but you had no idea what, like you'd lived a second life while you were asleep? No one had told you. What I discovered after that morning still keeps me up at night. So, before I go on, before I tell you what really happened to my gun that night, like and subscribe. You'll have to be around to hear the rest. And believe the worst hasn't even begun yet. I've been a police officer for 11 years. 11. It may seem like a random number, but after so much on the job, you start to measure your life by events, not birthdays. I know exactly the day I made my first arrest. I know the time fired my first shot. And I remember with absurd clarity the only time I cried and apologized after yelling at a victim's mother. That these things don't stick, that the uniform is a second skin immune to the dirt of the world, but it's not. And there are nights when, even silence, I hear the names that got stuck in my throat. I've never been one to exaggerate or make up a fuss to impress anyone. I've never needed. I've always done my job the way I thought was right, with attention, firmness, and respect. I've never lost a weapon. I've never left case open by carelessness. I've never been irresponsible with my equipment, my uniform, or my badge. I've always followed protocol. They called me stiff for that. Some colleagues even laughed. But do you know what's worse? It's that now no one laughs anymore. The night all this, I slept in a way that seemed strange to me even when I woke up. It was as if my body had sunk into a sleep that was too deep, artificial. I don't remember dreams. I don't remember the time I fell asleep. All I know is that when I opened my eyes, it was too late for any simple, this had never happened to me before. I've always been a light sleeper, and any footstep upstairs was enough to make me up and check. That night was different, a hole, a viscous silence. But before this, that makes me ashamed to even think about, there was a routine, and as ironic as it may sound now, I felt safe in it. I wake up at 6:15 a.m., even on my days off. I would run 2 miles, make coffee with just 1 spoonful of sugar, 2 slices of bread with egg, and, if was in a good mood, a little banana. After that, I would clean the gun. It was a ritual. I had always been methodical. Cleaning was almost a moment meditation. There were days when I would clean without needing to, just to keep up the habit. Maybe because, deep down, That as long as everything was in its place, things couldn't get out of control. I lived alone. It was my choice. After an engagement that fell because of my absence, I decided that I would no longer involve anyone in what I was carrying. And look, it wasn't because of the risks of work. It was because of this other side. This side that we never talk about at family dinners. The side that makes lock the bedroom door, even though you live alone. Turn off the bathroom light only after looking in the mirror a second time. Responding to certain messages. The police demand that you see things you would rather never have seen, and then expect you to go to sleep as if it happened. I won't lie. Over time you toughen up, or at least you pretend to toughen up. You see blood, you deal with people who are broken inside, and you learn to take a deep breath, to pretend that it won't follow you to your but the truth. The truth is that everything follows you, even the expressions of the dead. Especially. So when I say I slept soundly that night, I want you to understand, this, for me, was not normal. This was not rest. It was as if my body been forcibly shut down. And maybe it was, or maybe I just wanted to believe that because the alternative means so much more. My uniform hung in the same place it always did, next to the closet door. My boots were clean. Just as I had left, everything seemed intact. But there was one detail, one that made the skin on the back of my neck crawl as soon as I noticed it. Zipper on the safe was slightly crooked. That tiny flaw, so small it could have been just carelessness, stopped me cold. I would never leave the zipper like that, never. That was what hurt me. It wasn't the absence of the gun. It was the certainty that I wasn't the one who had made that zipper crooked. At the police, I was known for never making excuses. Even when I made mistakes, I owned up to it. I got yelled at for filing a report with a comma out place, but I preferred to put up with it rather than point the finger. I was proud of that. Proud my integrity. And now I was there, staring at my open drawer, empty in my holster, and my head spinning at a speed that made no sense. It as if I had fallen into a bad movie, a dream that I didn't want to remember. And worse, no one to share it with. Because who do you call when thee is you? At this point, I have to confess, part of me didn't want to believe it. I wanted to think that I had drunk strange, that I had carelessly left my gun in the unit, that someone had broken in without me noticing. But the key, the safe, was on my keychain. The front door was locked. No windows had been forced open. Nothing had been moved beyond what only I would was out of place. Do you know what ate me up the most? It was the memory of an old case, of a guy I was lying. He said he heard voices when he slept, that he woke up with marks on his arms, with objects out of place. And I, a pragmatic officer, told him he needed a psychiatrist, not a police report. I laughed with my colleagues afterwards. Now, I don't laugh anymore. A mind starts to betray us at times like this. I found myself opening and closing the safe 4 times, as if it were changing states. I picked up to check the time and realized that I had missed calls from the captain, all between 4:50 and 5:10 in the morning. I tried to call him, but he didn't answer. His last message was short. I need to talk to you, urgent. I knew something was wrong, but at that moment, still had no idea how serious it was. I only felt strange, as if the air in the house was heavier, and it was. I was sweating, even with the fan on. Fingers were shaking, but my face remained cold. And the worst part, I didn't feel hungry or thirsty, just this emptiness, as if my body was present. The rest was missing. I grabbed my uniform, put it on by inertia, and did up the buttons without looking in the mirror. With each movement, I tightened more. With each step toward the door, I felt like I was walking toward something I didn't want to see. In the hallway, my boots echoed than usual. Every sound seemed amplified, like when you're at a wake and every sigh sounds like thunder. I wanted to call someone. I too hear a voice that would say, "Calm down, it must be just a mistake." But there was no one, and even if there was, who would believe me? Who listened to a police officer saying he lost his own gun inside his house with no memory of it and think that was reasonable? I got out of the car. Seatbelt was still half fastened, something I always fix. One more detail, one more wound. I turned on the engine, and at that moment, with the still muted, with the city starting to breathe outside, something inside me already knew. Nothing would ever be the same again. Now have you ever had that feeling that something, invisible but powerful, placed you at the center of something much bigger than yourself? Everything you thought you had under control was just a well-constructed illusion. Because look, at that moment I still thought I could solve it. I could explain it, that all I had to do was go back there, listen, understand, but it wasn't enough, and maybe it never will be enough. It was to be just another ordinary morning, the kind of morning that was unhurried, with lukewarm coffee and low-key news on TV. The kind of day where would let my beard grow, trade my combat boots for flip-flops, and spend a few hours organizing the papers in the closet that no ever opens. But it wasn't like that, not even close. I woke up to a sharp ringing my cell phone, the kind that seems to go through your skin. It was 6:43 a.m. on the screen. 4 messages from the 3 missed calls from the captain, a notification from the control center in red, high priority, homicide. At first, my body didn't even react. I sat there blinking slowly, trying to remember if I had a shift. I didn't. It was my day off. Tuesday. Why this? Why so much insistence? Were you? I picked up my phone with a still shaky hand. I read the message twice. The third time, the sentence appeared in my head, as if each word carried something hidden. The bullet was from your gun. There, I knew something had broken. Serious, something that couldn't be undone. I jumped up. My legs were shaking, but I had to see for myself. The first thing I did was open the nightstand, where I always kept my holster. It was empty, a cold, sharp emptiness that hurt just to look at. Leather was still marked, as if the gun had been removed in a hurry, but carefully enough not to make a sound. I went to the closet. The clothes were always. The uniform in the same place, the shirt folded, the boots leaning against the side of the bottom shelf. The keychain hanging the inside doorknob, but there was something strange, a smell. Not strong, not exactly unpleasant, but different. Like the of people who aren't you. A sweat that wasn't mine. I approached the window. It was locked, from the inside. The latch was locked. The chain in place. And yet I had the absurd and very real impression that someone had been there that morning. Someone who had come and gone a trace, or worse, who might never have left. The bathroom mirror was slightly fogged up. The towel was wet. But I'd gotten up that night. I was sure of it. I hadn't gone to the bathroom. I hadn't drunk any water. I hadn't had any nightmares. Or if I had, they hidden in a corner of my memory where the light no longer reached. I opened the refrigerator on reflex. Everything was in its place. The milk, butter, the orange juice that I always forget is there. But the mug I usually use was out of the sink on the counter, dry, as if it had been washed a hurry. As if someone had tried to leave everything as it was, almost everything. And that's when I noticed the key to the it was on the keychain, as always, only it wasn't properly attached, hanging, half-twisted. That hurt. I would never leave it like that. Because it was the kind of thing the old man taught me. A poorly kept key is an invitation to misfortune, and my never used that word lightly. The safe. Inside, everything looked the same, the badge, the documents, the spare revolver. But my Glock, the one I had, was gone. There was no on the foam where it fit. It looked like it had never been there, but it had been. I cleaned it on Saturday. I oiled the magazine. With the pins. I remember how my hand slipped on the blue cloth and fell onto the table. There was even a small stain on the wood, made by the gun oil. There was nothing. Not her, not the cloth, not the smell of metal. My stomach turned. I paced the house like an idiot, as if she might be there. lying the floor behind the couch in the laundry basket. I rummaged through the closets, lifted the mattress, opened the radiator box. Nothing. That was gone, and I knew this was no ordinary robbery. There were no signs of a break-in, no cameras in the hallway had been activated. No neighbors noticed anything, and the only key was mine. The only fingerprint on that safe was mine, too. With each passing second, there grew inside me like a fever that rises without warning. I began to sweat, but it was a cold sweat. On my back, in the middle of my neck, between fingers, a sweat that came from within, as if my body were trying to expel something it couldn't understand. I opened the medicine cabinet and out an anti-anxiety pill that I hadn't taken in months. I swallowed hard. I didn't even think. The taste stuck in I went back to my phone. I read the message again. I wanted to find some loophole, an ambiguous sentence, a typo. But there was the bullet. From my gun, a dead man. I tried calling the captain. It rang twice, then hung up. I tried Sergeant Ramos. Voicemail. The police station group. No comments about the incident. Silence. It was as if something was being held back. As if they knew and were waiting me to take the initiative. I looked at the mirror in the living room, and for a second I was sure my reflection had moved before me. It was quick. Maybe I was just paranoid, but the feeling stayed, and the worst part, it was still here. I sat on the edge of the couch. My hands clasped my elbows on my knees, my heart racing. I started remembering small things, very small things. Like the noise of the streetlight, which had flickered more often than usual the night before. Like the neighbor's puppy, which had barked at 3 a.m. I'd thought it was just another cat on the roof. Like the buzzing of the kitchen radio, which had turned on and off by itself for 2 seconds. And died it on the flickering of the light, details, all small, all ignored, all now coming back with a vengeance, as if they were trying to warn me. I opened the door. The morning light was a little blinding. The street was too quiet. The doorman waved. I tried to smile back, but I think I shook my head. As I got out of the car, one thought kept repeating itself. Like a dirty mantra, that bullet killed someone. And what me inside was knowing that it came from the weapon that I swore to protect. That I swore never lose. That I swore to never use without reason. Now looking back on all this, I wonder how much control do we think we have our own lives? Because at that moment, as I walked down the steps in silence, I still believed I could it. I still believed that logic would solve it. But there are things that don't make sense. There are things that can only be explained if you have the courage to look closely. And what I saw that day, in the dead man's face, in the bullet mark, the name written on the report. No, not yet. Have you ever felt like something was wrong, but didn't know where to look? Have you ever felt like somewhere is living a distorted version of your life? Do you think this could have actually happened? I wanted to believe it just a mistake. That someone in the system had typed in the wrong time, that they had mixed up the serial number on the gun. Maybe it was a different cop, a different model, a different uniform. You cling to any explanation, no matter how unlikely. When what's at stake is you are, and that was who I was. I was a cop. I was the guy who did everything right. I was the guy who didn't make like that. I arrived at the police station before 7. I didn't even go in through the front. I went in through like I did on my early morning shifts, through the back, as if I wanted to avoid stares. My badge was in my pocket, my uniform on my body, but inside, I wasn't the same man who had left there 2 days earlier. The receptionist looked at me strangely. She didn't ask anything. She didn't say hello. She just nodded and pointed with her eyes to the monitoring room in the back, where the servers and from the internal cameras were. The captain was already there, standing, coatless, shirt wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. He saw me. He didn't say good morning. He didn't say sit down. He didn't call me by name. He just said straight out, "We have to see something." Followed. The room was dark, the blinds closed. The large screen in the center of the wall displayed the mosaic of last night's camera feeds. were marked in the lower corner, blank, clean, cold. Everything seemed normal. Empty desks, silent hallways, lights off. Until he pressed play at just right moment. Osutri 1206. The weapons hall appears. Everything is silent. The door is locked. The nightlight is blinking. Then someone appears in the corner of the image. My heart skipped a beat. The silhouette was unmistakable. The way he swung his left leg, the automatic gesture of pulling up his right sleeve as if something was bothering him. It was me. It was my uniform. But it couldn't be. He walked straight to the door of the room. He didn't force his way in. He didn't hesitate. He took access card out of his pocket and placed it on the reader. The green light came on. The lock released. He walked in, calmly. Inside. Another shows the moment when that someone who looked like me in every detail approaches the bookshelf. Types the password into the safe in drawer 4, bends down with precision and picks up my Glock. With gloves. All with gloves. This, I not knowing to whom or why. The captain paused the image. We remained silent for a few seconds. My stomach was churning. My face was hot. I was shallow. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, even though they were in my pockets. He turned around slowly. "That card," he said, "was used your biometric identification." Impossible. That's what we said too, but the logs are there. You accessed the wing at 3:12. The only fingerprint on the sensor is yours. I was sleeping in my house, alone. Is there any way to prove it? They hit me like a sledgehammer, because no, there wasn't. No cameras in my apartment, no visitors, no neighbors to witness it, no records, just me. Pillow, and that sleep too deep to be reliable. What about the login system, the IP, the entry into the system? I asked, trying to hold on to the shred of hope. Everything normal, same address as always. Nothing indicates a break-in, nothing indicates forgery. "So are you saying that it's me?" He didn't answer, but it was at that moment that a bigger doubt arose within me. Something that made me break out a cold sweat. More than in any chase or shootout in my life. What if it wasn't a mistake? What if, somehow, I home, asleep, sleepwalking, manipulated, and this was the part that made me want to vomit, and if I wasn't alone inside myself. The captain the room without saying anything else. He just gave me a quick look, as if he were looking at a ghost. I stood there, watching the looping that image of the man with my face, my uniform, my walk. The camera didn't show the face clearly, but I knew, I felt. That was, or it seemed too much not to be. Suddenly the whole thing started to become bigger than me. It wasn't just the gun. It was the fact that I didn't remember, that I didn't have control. I started to have flashes in my head, random images. A metallic hallway, the smell of gunpowder, but nothing consistent, nothing firm, just shadows. I staggered out of the room. I crossed the hallway looking either way. In the locker room I splashed my face. I looked in the mirror, and I swear, by all that is holy, for a reflection didn't look like mine. Sweat was dripping down his forehead, and the reflection's forehead seemed to be smiling, a small smile. Like it knew something I didn't. I blinked. It was gone, but I didn't forget. And it was at that moment that I understood. This was not just that was the beginning of something much bigger. And whatever had started, it wasn't to stop any time soon. There are things that training never prepares us to face. You can go through 100 scene simulations, listen to a lecture by an expert, study shooting patterns, ballistics, blood. But there comes that moment when everything stops, when the world seems to choke in silence, as if even the air around you knew that this should not be happening. The body was covered by a white sheet. It was in an alley behind an old workshop, a disused industrial area, accessed by an alley so narrow that the patrol car could barely pass through. Police officers on patrol had cordoned off the area. One of them, the youngest, was smoking with a shaking hand and avoiding looking down. The other a hard expression, but could not hide his red eyes. They had been there for less than 20 minutes when I arrived. "You'll want to see," of them said softly, almost in a whisper. He didn't even ask if I was okay. He didn't even try to explain what was waiting for. He just said that, with a fear that seemed older than the scene itself. The sheet was dirty with and stained with dried blood. Someone had covered the body in a hurry, perhaps out of instinct, perhaps out of desperation. First thing I noticed were the feet, bare, swollen, the skin a little greenish, as if they had been in standing water for too long. I'd seen rotting before, but not like this, not like that, not with that smell. The smell, it wasn't just of death. It was like rust mixed with of an old basement, a smell that stuck in the back of your throat and made your eyes burn. I knelt down slowly. The slid away with just a touch, and then I saw it. My mouth went dry immediately. I couldn't speak or think, because the face, distorted by death, but still unmistakable, was his, Henry Ramos, a name I had erased from my memory years ago, or I thought I had. Enrique was the kind of criminal who even the most skeptical, psychopath, maybe, but there was something more to it. Something that not even the explained properly. He was arrested for triple murder, strange rituals, evidence that no one understood. Not even the we caught him in an abandoned house in the countryside, 6 years ago. Alone, without resisting. At the time, I remember thinking that he to be caught. He looked me in the eyes that night and said, "See you again, doctor," with a smile. One of those slow smiles. Kind that leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But he died. I was in court. I saw the images. The preventive detention became the maximum sentence. Later, an escape attempt, an exchange of gunfire. He took 2 bullets to the chest, official death certificate, body identified by a relative. The end, or at least that's what I believed. The captain arrived shortly after. He brought the file with him, the file share. Because the system through biometrics, the body found that morning was Enrique Ramos. "That doesn't make sense," I muttered. My voice wasn't firm. It more a breath of fear than a sentence. "We saw him die," he replied, as if trying to repeat it to himself, to see if he believed it. "I saw the clothes, and now he's here." Silence fell heavily between us. The wind seemed to blow more slowly. The street behind the workshop was as if the world had receded a little, leaving us there alone with that impossibility. And then came the detail knocked me out for good. The preliminary report indicated time of death between 3:20 and 3:30 a.m. in the morning, and I saw the video, the man with my face, my uniform, enter the weapons room at 3:12. I was left without breathing for a few seconds, literally. My body to breathe. My mind screamed for an explanation, for a logical line, for some way out, but there was none. Everything pointed to me, fit together like a perfect trap. I looked back at Henrique's face. There were strange marks on his neck, like symbols, precise cuts. Not made by a blade, more like scars, as if they had been there for a long time, except the skin around them was alive, newly alive, as if he had them before he died. Again. "It doesn't make sense," I repeated, already without strength. And then, the revolt. The lump in my throat to stone. Because if he died, he freely died 6 years ago, so who was buried? Who authorized it? Who lied? Trigger of exploding inside me like muffled dynamite. What if it was all part of something bigger, something I should never have touched? Vehicle arrived for removal. The IML team could not hide their discomfort. One of them, an older one, commented quietly, thinking no one would hear. "Seen this guy before, I'm sure of it. Goosebumps, cold down the spine." I asked for images from the scene. Nearby cell phones, nothing, no record of his presence before his death, no clues. The only concrete trace was the bullet. The bullet found in the same one that came out of my Glock. Can you understand the weight of that? To be certain that something is impossible, yet to be faced with living proof. The police station that night became a tomb of questions, and I was the only one buried in it. But just when nothing could get any worse, a phone call changed everything. But I'll tell you about that later. Have you ever seen someone and then years later see them again? And not in a dream, in flesh, in blood. Do you believe in coincidence? Because I believe anymore. That night I didn't come home. Staying home meant staring in the mirror, and I no longer trusted the reflection. I went to the central police station, where we archive old recordings, especially those related to highly dangerous prisoners like Henrique. And after 6 years, I knew that the video from his cell should still be in the system, because I myself asked for it to be archived redundantly. On media, digital and physical, I never trusted the cloud 100%, much less bureaucratic forgetfulness. On the way, my thoughts were racing at an speed. I tried to reconstruct the day he died, the transport, the supposed escape, the exchange of gunfire. Everything a bit hazy now, as if time had eroded essential details. I remembered voices, sirens, a strong smell of gunpowder and muffled screams, the walls of the penitentiary. But the body, his body, I only saw it inside the black bag. And that now seemed too distant to trust. The digital archives room was on the second basement floor. It was cold, with dim white light and that sound from the server. A metallic hum that got annoying after 5 minutes. I accessed the terminal with my login. The directory corresponding to the month of Henrique's death, March, 6 years ago. The system took a while to load, as if it was undecided between me or hiding what I was looking for. Nothing. The folder in cell B2 simply did not exist. Neither in the primary system in the mirrored copy. I went through the directories one by one. I used filters, advanced search commands, keywords, number, day, time, nothing. It was as if that video had never existed. My hands began to sweat. The keyboard was wet under my fingers. I went to the sergeant in charge of records at the time. He retired 2 years ago. I called him. Nothing. Voicemail. I tried the assistant at time. He moved to another city. I tried the prison coordinator. He refused the call. The ends were beginning to come apart. A ball of yarn pulled too quickly. It was as if someone had anticipated my search and cut the threads before I arrived. I sat in the surveillance alone. The lights were dim. The air smelled of stale coffee. I tried to take a deep breath. I was about to try to contact former prison warden directly when my cell phone vibrated. No number. Black screen. Media message received. My blood cold. It was a video. I put on the headphones and pressed play. The footage was dark, but clearly shot from inside cell, high angle. The camera was shaking a little. Probably someone had tried to disassemble it. In the footage, a man was in the corner, head down, stained white shirt, hands resting on his knees. Silence, no outside sound. Just the subtle hiss of the cameras. It was him, Henry. But he didn't look sick or scared or even detained. He was calm, too calm. The video, little by little, he raised his head. He looked directly at the camera. His gaze was dry, fixed, unblinking. And then, in a low, almost voice, he said, "This isn't a prison. It's a mirror, and mirrors reflect what we hide." I paused. The sentence hit me like a punch. I went a few seconds. I saw it again. That was it. And he was smiling, a weak smile, like someone who knows too much. At the bottom of the video, the timestamp, 3 days after the official death. I started breathing again, but with difficulty, as if the air had thickened. Someone was with the truth, or worse, rewriting it. I looked around. The police station was nearly empty, late at night. The radio in the next room for a second, static, a name said in the background. My name. I stood up so fast that the chair tipped over. I left the dark hallway, no movement. I opened the door to the next room. Empty. I went back. I grabbed my phone. I tried to track down the source of recording, but the file was gone. Gone, like it had never existed. No trace of it in the data, no link, no cache. I know what you're thinking, that I'm delusional, but I swear on everything I have left of my sanity, that video existed. I saw it. I heard that was not a dream. And at that moment I realized that I was no longer investigating a case. I was inside it. The difference? Cases have a middle and end. This seemed like a cycle, a maze with no exit, or worse, with an exit that doesn't want to be found. I sat again. I tried to think, to plan, to run after someone who could have access to the physical backup of the cameras, the security HD. But there one problem. It was locked in the old penitentiary storage room, which had been deactivated for years. And the key. The key was in of someone who disappeared from the city months ago. The truth was being buried little by little right before my eyes. And the I dug, the deeper the hole seemed. But if they buried the truth, why did they let me dig? And more, who sent that video, and why, now? You ever felt like you were being guided by someone you couldn't see? Because at that moment, I was no longer chasing answers. I was being led them. The question was, why and by whom? Do you think this is just paranoia? Or have you ever seen someone disappear? To hide what we remembered, I was removed the next day. The decision came directly from the Internal Affairs Department. Officially, they said it was precautionary measure, while the investigation continued. Informally, I was already guilty. No one said it out loud, of course, but could see it in the looks on people's faces, in the whispers in the hallways, in the way my colleagues, even those who had known me, for passing me on the stairs or in the police station courtyard. I can't say I didn't expect it. That video, after the bullet, after the body, it was only a matter of time before they let me out, even if it was temporarily. The worst part wasn't over the spare gun or signing the suspension. It was folding the uniform, putting it in the backpack, and realizing that that no longer belonged to me. I felt like I had been forcibly ripped from the only identity I had. I, a police officer, I didn't know how to be anything else. I returned home like a stranger returning to a place I didn't recognize. Everything was it had always been, but nothing seemed the same. The lamplight flickered as I passed. The mirror in the hallway, the one where my teeth every morning, repelled me. I avoided looking directly at it, as if I knew that at any moment it might give me a different. I started locking everything up. 3 turns on the door lock, heavy-duty chain. Lock on safe. I did something I'd never done before. I installed a camera in the room, pointing it right at the closet where the gun used to be. I want to watch anyone. I wanted to watch myself. The nights became a minefield. I would lie down, and that knot would start to form in my stomach. Question: will I wake up here or somewhere else, with no memory of how I got there? He would wake up several times, sweaty, panting, with a dry and a pounding head. Sometimes I thought I heard footsteps in the hallway. Other times, I would wake up to the sound of the TV on. Even it was off. One morning I swore I saw the shadow of someone standing in the corner of the room. But I turned on the light. There was nothing. No marks on the floor, no noise, just the usual silence. The trauma began to seep through the cracks in routine. I stopped answering calls. I forgot to eat. I skipped meals because my mind was too busy to decipher everything, as if it had been programmed to live in a loop. Enrique, the cell, the video, bullet, my face in the hallway, and now this again. I woke up yesterday. It was 4:17 in the morning. My throat was dry, my forehead was cold. I up in shock. I didn't know why, but my whole body was on alert, as if I had heard a gunshot that never happened. I walked to the closet. I opened door. Everything seemed normal, but the zipper on the holster was crooked again. That detail, that damn twist that no one would know was me, that no one but me would have the reflex to do. My breath came in short pants. I touched the holster, my fingertips. It was warm, as if it had just been handled. I ran to the camera. I stopped in front of the computer. I played recording from the night. The image was shaking a little. Something was interfering with the signal. I skipped to between 2 and 4 in the nothing. No movement, but there was a cut. Exactly at 03:14, the video freezes for 3 seconds. When it comes, the image is dark, as if the lens had been covered and then gently uncapped. And then, for one frame, just one, a figure appears. Not face, not a clear body, just an outline, enough to make me freeze. I couldn't think clearly anymore. I stood there, staring at the monitor. My legs weaken. It was like being in a nightmare that doesn't end when you wake up, because it starts after that you open your eyes. The worst part, thinking that something had gotten in there. The worst part was the growing, paralyzing feeling that maybe I'd gotten out of bed, done everything, moved the holster, deleted the video, went back to bed and forgotten. The kind of thinking that destroys any you have about yourself. And when you no longer trust what you can or cannot do while you sleep. What's left you? I spent the next day pacing around the house. I replayed the video dozens of times, frame by frame. I tried to find a pattern, a reflection, but the more I looked, the less I saw. I went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water and stood there, staring the emptiness of the early morning. I realized I was talking in a low voice, whispering, asking to stop. Ask to who? My face in the reflection, the glass was different, paler, sunken eyes. A man who no longer knew where guilt ended and fear began. And then came the thought of all, what if this somebody that is using me? Is it really me? A side I didn't know about, a hidden fragment, waiting for right moment to emerge. I stood there for a long time with the bottle in my hands. I could feel the cold water running down my fingers. I didn't move, because deep down, maybe I wanted to hear something, anything, but the house responded with silence, a silence that screams at me. You ever felt like there's someone living inside you? Someone who didn't ask for permission to come in and has no plans to leave? I knew that recording would destroy me a little more inside, but I pressed play anyway. The image flickered slightly, as if the lens was fighting some interference. It was a video that I had set up myself from my own room, with the sole purpose of monitoring that. Until then, I had never needed to monitor myself, but now, in that endless night, it was the only chance to understand, or at least to confirm what I feared most. The recording started normally. I was sleeping, motionless. The pulled up to my chest. The fan was turning slowly in the corner of the screen. Silence. The kind of silence that precedes the kind of truth we want to know. At 3:13:09 a.m., a shadow crosses the corner of the image. Slowly, almost. The quality of the camera, which I swore was good, seemed to deteriorate at that very point. The image became grainy, as if the air in the room changed density. And then he appeared, on the closet door, standing still. His face was half in the shadows. My body, my eyes fixed on the screen. My hands gripped the table so tightly that I felt a snap in my fingers. The man moves, slowly, unhurriedly. Like who already knows exactly what he's looking for. He walks over to the closet. He bends down. He opens the compartment where I usually keep and the most disturbing thing, he does it with the naturalness of someone who already done before. The does not shake, the camera does not fail, and there, in the soft light of the lamp, the scene reveals itself with a clarity that takes my breath. The man has themey face, exactly mine. Not similar, it's my. The same cut on right eyebrow, the same birthmark on the side of his neck, the same way of walking, the same posture with his shoulders slightly forward, the same tilt of his head when he looks at something closely. He is me, but he was not me. He hesitates. He picks up the gun with millimeter precision. He checks the magazine. He closes it. He goes back to the bedroom door. He stops. He looks the bed. There, frozen in the image, is me, sleeping soundly, like someone who would never know that this was happening. And the reflection the camera captures in the window glass shows a smile on my face. A small smile, curved at one corner, as if to say, "Never understand." The recording cuts again. 2 seconds of black screen. When he returns, the room is empty. I still sleep. And the gun. I close the laptop like someone closing the lid of a coffin. I got up from the chair without knowing where to step. My whole body was shaking. I were weak. My hands were tingling. It was as if my nervous system was screaming, "Run," but my mind wanted to stay. I wanted to see it. I wanted to find some explanation that would take away the absurdity of it, but there wasn't. I ran my hand over my face. My skin cold and damp. I looked in the hallway mirror. I avoided looking at it for a long time, and then the thought came, cruel, silent. But what if this me has always been here? What if this reflection, the one that haunts me in the videos, that watches me while I sleep, didn't appear? What if it was just waiting for something to open the door? The gun was just the beginning. Or maybe even that. Because the more I think, the more I realize that there are gaps in my memory. Little things that I always thought were just a piece of paper out of place. A conversation that I swore I had, but no one remembers. A wound on me that I never knew how I got. What if I never really woke up? What if part of me was still asleep? Or worse, if what walks around the what picks up the gun, what smiles for the camera, is the agreed part. Since that day, I haven't slept with the off. I no longer leave the bedroom door ajar. I've changed the locks, installed more cameras, but nothing gives me peace. No matter how many locks I put up, what scares me might already be inside me. And now, every time I close my eyes, the question comes back. How many times have I been that other person without knowing it? Have you ever felt like part of you is lying, that may be the real imposter in your own body? Do you think this could really be happening? Because I'm not sure who I am when I wake up anymore. If you've made this far, it's because this story has stirred something inside you. Maybe it reminded you of a strange feeling, a doubt that has your mind, or maybe it simply kept you hooked from beginning to end. And look, that's no wonder. Every detail here was made to you inside, with me living all of this. So now you can be a part of this too. In a simple way. When you like the video, subscribe, it reaches more people who, like you, enjoy stories that give you goosebumps, that leave you, and this exchange is what keeps this channel alive. By the way, comment below the word mirror. Only those who understand it until the will know the weight of this. And I want to know who is really with me on this. The next video is already on the screen. And if this story caught your attention, what comes next, turn your head upside down. It's a more surprising story. A mystery that will take you away and teach you a lesson you'll never forget.